Bilam hops on a single theme, his unconditional submission to the will of the Lord.
But see, I just showed that he's wrong. Because he doesn't have, what was that word? What did you call it?
His unconditional submission
Unconditional.
to the
You
will
see
of
that
the
it's
Lord.
not unconditional. He has a condition, he has a price.
Mm-hmm.
So that's bogus. You know, can I just interject something here?
Please.
Okay. You mentioned a very interesting point, and that is Bilam looks good on paper.
Mm-hmm.
Torah, the written Torah, spends 2 chapters, just exactly like Luke said, making Bilam appear good. And this is not a surprise. Written Torah, whether it's in the Chumash or whether it's in the prophets, wherever, has a habit of taking the worst people, making them look good, and takes some of the best people and tries to make them look bad. And this is a common thing. And this is why you can't read the written Tanakh without the commentaries. Anyone, I know the Belzer Rebbe said this, anyone who reads, when you read the written prophets by themselves, you will end up a heretic. Because you can't, they're not meant to be, they were never written to be read without the commentaries. The Chumash, the 5 books of Moses, cannot be understood without the commentaries, like you just said about the death penalty, like we just understood about Bilam. The prophets are the same way. You know, I don't want to go too much on a tangent.
Yeah, keep going.
Okay, but like we talked about King Shlomo Melech, King Solomon. He's made out. I mean, you can't believe what you're reading in the written Tanakh. It says at the very beginning when it introduces Solomon in Kings, in the book of Kings, it says he's the wisest man who ever lived. The wisest man who ever lived. He's smarter than Einstein. He's smarter than anybody. King Solomon. Smart guy. Later on, it says at the very end that he bowed down to idols. He not only bowed down to one idol, he bowed down to over 700 different idols. You have to be a moron to bow down to more than one. And I'll explain that. He had over 700 wives. Okay? And each one had their own idol, completely mutually exclusive from the next woman. Each one of these women was smart enough. I mean, you have to be pretty stupid to bow down to sticks and stones, right? But at least they were smart enough not to bow down to the next woman's sticks and stones. Because it's impossible that there could be 2 gods working cohesively. Right. It's either your thing is right and the other one's wrong, or the other one's right and you're wrong. But it can't be that both are right. There's 700 of them. It could be that there's one of them that's right. But it can't be that all 700 are right. And if you go for 700, one of these idols is going to be pissed off that you're bowing down to the other 699. Yeah. But Solomon bowed down to all 700. So not only was he stupid to bow down to one, he's dumber than his 700 wives. So not only was he not the wisest man who ever lived, he wasn't even the 700th wisest person, because his wives were smarter than him. Because at least they only bowed down to one. Am I right? So there's got to be another explanation here. And there is. Can I go into it?
Yes.
Okay, we have 5 minutes. The answer is, he never bowed down to any of them. He's not that stupid. He's the wisest man who ever lived. You know, these wives, these sticks and stones are not his business. I mean, he doesn't believe in that crap. So what's going on here? So the answer is, he was on his deathbed. The guy was on his deathbed. He was lying there. His wives, 700 of them. Now, you can't satisfy 700 women even when you're on your feet, right? I mean, come on. 700 women, Jewish women, you're going to satisfy? That's not going to happen, right? But he could at least try. So he would make the round. I imagine that's what he did 24 hours a day, was just constantly making the rounds between all his wives. They all lived in different houses, and this guy was busy, right? This guy's a stud. He's going out there, because I don't think he's doing 10 at a time, He's going around.
Individual attention.
Yeah, and that's 700. I mean, that's a lot of women, right? This guy's going around, but he's at least comes around often enough to each house to make sure that there's no, there's no idolatry going on in the house. There's no idolatry going on in the house. If he saw some sticks and stones being bowed down to, he would take care of that and say, honey, you can't do that here. You do that, you're out. Okay? You can't do that. when he was on his deathbed and he could no longer make the rounds, his wives just went back to what they used to do. Because every one of these wives was a convert from a different country, and that's a whole story too. Mm-hmm. None of these were born Jewish. They were all like, he brought in different women from each country, and his idea was, this is what I'm going to do for, to help, establish the times of Messiah. He thought he was the Messiah. Mm-hmm. Solomon actually thought he was the Messiah. Mm-hmm. And we can get into that. I mean, there's like all the timing was right. It talks about how his father, David, everybody was at war during his father's time. There's no wars in the times of Shlomo, right? Yeah. It was a time of peace. They built the base of Mikdash. They built the temple. Like, he was satisfying all the requirements of the times of Messiah. So he felt like the thing he had to do was like bring in all the non-Jews, get them to accept the idea of God, and he was all set. And he did that by bringing a different woman from each country. And then he converted them, and then, okay. But the problem was, the Torah tells us that if you put it says in the written Torah, you can actually look it up. If you give yourself a king, these are the warnings. Like, you can't have too many horses, he's going to lead you back to Egypt. You can't have too many wives, or they're going to cause him to turn his heart. So David was real good, because it says like you're not supposed to have more than 18 wives. It warns, Talmud explains you shouldn't have more than 18 wives if you're the king. David had less than 18. But Solomon said, that doesn't apply to me because I'm the Messiah.
Yeah.
So he went, I don't need 18, that's just for a normal king, but I'm the Messiah and things are going to be okay. He had 700. So God was like, okay, buddy, you know what? You thought you were the Messiah, and guess what? You're not. Right? And now you're going to pay because you went against the warning of getting more than 18 because you thought, everything was going to be hunky-dory. And now Torah is going to credit you with being like the biggest idiot because now that you're on your deathbed, you're going to be treated as if, because it says that somebody who has the power to keep somebody from doing something wrong, mm-hmm. and they don't do it, they get credited as if they did it themselves. Mm-hmm. So Solomon, when he was alive, he could keep the women from bowing to Avodah Zarah, from bowing to idolatry, but when he started dying, he couldn't do it anymore. So how's that his fault? Because he should have never married them to begin with.
Yeah.
If he hadn't married 700 and he only married 18, this problem wouldn't take place because he would have been there enough times, whatever, they wouldn't have all gone back, right? So it's his fault because he should have never married them, and now the written Torah, the prophets, the Bible is going to credit him as if he himself bowed down to idols. But if you don't have the Talmud behind you, and you don't have the commentaries, then you're going to walk away thinking that King Solomon actually bowed down to 700 idols. And if you believe that, then you are so far from Judaism, and you are so ignorant. Okay, go ahead.
We fear that their soul is in peril if they believe that.
They're just sad.
I'm just using Christian talk.
Oh, okay.
I was raised a Christian, so I like to throw in a little soul is in peril talk every once in a while.
Go for it.
There's a midrash that states that Bilam was greater in wisdom than Moses, and
That's possible.
that he had three features possessed by the prophecy of Bilam that were absent from that of Moses. Number one, Bilam always knew who he was speaking to, that he was speaking to God. Moses often did not know who he was speaking to. Moses did not know when God would talk with him, while Bilam knew. And Bilam could speak to God whenever he wanted. So this is just one midrashic view, and if you want the sources, you can look at Excursus 58 in this Jewish Publication Society commentary on the Book of Numbers. But throughout the Torah, we see that God has no problem talking to non-Jews. And I was just wondering if Christianity might have a divine element in it, that this might be God's way of reaching out to the Goyim. And do you think it's possible that God could take human form as a way to connect with the Goyim?
No, absolutely not.
I mean, a Jew cannot believe that, but do you think that Christianity could be a way to God for non-Jews, and that God sent Jesus in some sense to reach out to non-Jews and give them a way to Him?
This is a debate. This is an argument within Judaism itself. Mm-hmm. Do you want me to go into it?
Yeah.
Okay. Non-Jews. Actually, I can give a shout out. I heard a very good thing today from. There's a guy who does internet radio. Mm-hmm. Internet radio on Q77, and his name is Mad Jack.